Good afternoon and welcome to TechNation's Tools of the Trade live demo. Today we'll learn more about the tool of the trade, the Claroty xDome, which is featured in the August issue of TechNation magazine. We're joined by Justin Brayman, Director of Customer Success, America's Healthcare at Claroty, and he will demonstrate in the Claroty xDome the industry's leading healthcare cyber physical systems protection platform, enabling healthcare organizations to safely deliver connected care while enhancing efficiencies across the clinical environment. So we'd like to thank our sponsor, Claroty. As the world's most trusted healthcare cybersecurity company, Claroty empowers HDOs to comprehensively monitor and manage risk across their healthcare extended Internet of Things environment. Whether it be through a medical device or a building management system, attack surfaces grow as connected assets expand, creating security blind spots that pose risks to availability, integrity, and safety. Claroty tackles these risks to ensure cyber and operation resilience are within your reach. So for more information, you can visit claroty.com. Today's webinar, of course, is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once you've submitted the survey. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Just a quick reminder about our fall MD Expo. We're headed to the Mohegan Sun Casino and Resort in Connecticut from October the 8th to the 10th. So please join us for 3 days of education, networking, and the latest advances in medical technology products and services. Again, more details and registration details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Also, just a quick mention, TechNation magazine is excited to announce that we're accepting nominations for the 2nd annual Tech Choice Awards. Find out how to make a nomination at onetechnation.com and just click on the trophy icon. Deadline is next week, August the 16th. Okay, let's kick off today's demonstration by giving away one of our Webinar Wednesday 10th anniversary prizes. Today's prize is a $100 Amazon card. So using the questions feature on your dashboard, let me know the answer to the following trivia question. August is National Eye Exam Month. What is the most common eye color? I'll reveal the answer and our winner at the end of the webinar. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Justin Brayman. So Justin, you may begin whenever you're ready.
All right, awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be across the world today. It's a pleasure having you join us. As Linda outlined, my name is Justin Brayman. I'm the Director of Customer Success for the Americas for Healthcare for Claroty, and I'm here today to give you a little bit of a background and demo on the Claroty xDome platform. So we shall dive right in. There are 3 main challenges right now that we see within healthcare that are helping to drive change within the industry. First amongst those is expanded connectivity. The pace of automation and connectivity within healthcare delivery organizations is accelerating, and it's doing so very quickly. Hospitals, clinics, medical offices are continuously adding and adopting new technologies that are involved in patient care delivery, such as stronger digital health, telemedicine, patient engagement programs, etc. As both the clinical and non-clinical workflows in healthcare organizations become more interconnected and reliant on these new technologies, there is a gap in how they are potentially managed by traditional IT processes and controls. So for instance, by 2029, Internet of Things, IoT connections specifically, are going to reach nearly 40 billion globally, which is more than twice today's number. The growth then in expanded connectivity leads to increased exposure and attack surface for healthcare environments. So these are things that then malicious actors can look to exploit. that toggles on to the second point. There is now heightened threat activity because of this increasing threat landscape. We're seeing originally things along the lines of data breaches for the previous years, but we've now moved into the age of ransomware, and these represent a significant change because ransomware and similar threats are causing disruptions to hospital workflows and impacting, most importantly, patient safety. So as the cost and impact of patient safety from cybersecurity risks continues to grow, health systems are looking for ways to expand and strengthen their existing cybersecurity efforts, as well as expand their programs in general. Lastly, regulatory pressure. Of course, governments around the world are starting to release not only recommendations and suggestions for adherence to a number of cybersecurity frameworks, NIST CSF, European Union directives for NIS2. All of these things are already in progress or are slowly making their way from recommendations to what will soon become regulatory requirements that organizations will need to be able to measure their compliance against. Additionally, with the costs associated with these attacks and the cost that it's had to organizations and particularly their insurers, compliance with these frameworks can also be leveraged to help reduce those insurance premiums. So all of these things, the expansion in connectivity and threat activity, as well as regulatory pressures, are what are pushing the cybersecurity within our industry at the moment. Looking at the modern healthcare environment, right, the connectivity has expanded hugely, right? So it's no longer just your traditional IT systems and such. You're also looking at all of the connected medical devices in the environment, building automation systems, as well as other Internet of Things technologies. Hospital environments and healthcare environments in general are essentially little cities, and they go far beyond your traditional IT systems. At Claroty, we define all of these things that live outside your traditional IT processes and controls as cyber physical systems. In healthcare environments, this represents medical devices such as imaging systems, infusion pumps, your operational technologies and building automation systems such as HVAC, electrical panels, all kinds of other direct controls, as well as your Internet of Things devices, your security cameras, printers, communication systems like your VoIP phones, etc. In order to maintain patient care, having the right security controls for all of these devices is really critical. And there are definitely some nuances associated with them that the traditional IT controls don't allow you to do. As it sits, because of these things and how the connectivity looks today, here are just a few stats in general based on our research of what the threat landscape can potentially look like in your typical healthcare environment. 14% of your Internet of Medical Things devices are running unsupported operating systems or are end of life and are still involved in care delivery. 63% of the known exploited vulnerabilities, according to CISA, can be found in healthcare environments. There have been recent cyber incidents that have impacted building automation systems, and very critically, 22% of hospitals have devices that are bridging the internal networks. And by that, I mean devices that are touching both your corporate and guest networks, which in itself is a huge risk and allows attackers paths into your corporate networks very, very easily. So there is a need to protect against those things. So this is part of the challenge that we are all looking at. As I mentioned before, the disruptions from the cyber attacks are increasing. It started very early on with data breaches and PHI and the focus on preventing those kinds of items. That has now very much evolved with recent incidents over these past few years that again are causing care disruption and impacting hospitals' abilities to serve their patient communities. So it's important to note now from our perspective that cybersecurity is patient safety, right? Protecting all of these systems is critical to patient safety. I mentioned, of course, some of the regulatory pressures that are driving this too. These are just a few of the examples. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the frameworks in general, but recent Patch Act and other regulatory requirements that are coming down. Your organizations are going to have to live up to these. As I said, they are advisory. Many of them, at least currently, are somewhat advisory, but they will become regulated requirements that you will have to measure your compliance against. The challenges to solving that, of course, then, based on the connectivity and the controls that are in place today, I'll quickly breeze through this just to get everything up there. Leveraging your traditional IT solutions, those are often incompatible with medical devices. They can introduce risk to your care delivery, so that has to be considered. Antiquated asset discovery. Solutions that are leveraging a passive-only approach are becoming outdated. There are too many things that don't talk enough for passive only approaches to be fully effective. So there is a need for additional discovery, or I should say more active means of identifying your assets, and you need discovery beyond your medical devices now, as I indicated with the IoT and operational technologies too. Those two things together lead into a lack of actionable insights, right? If you aren't able to make good use of your existing solutions just because of the challenges associated with extending them into these other environments, and you have incomplete asset discovery, it really leaves you in a place of not knowing where to go next. You have a weak foundation for being able to build your cybersecurity programs, and you don't have the ability to really operationalize them and move the bar forward on reducing your risk. Furthermore, there is a business value to this as well. So the challenges to these programs, there is a cost associated with security. I think we all realize that. So it's important that solutions that support your cybersecurity programs and goals also allow you potentially to obtain greater value from your clinical assets and other systems, understand their ROI, help with your procurement processes, maintenance, etc. So getting solutions in place that can deliver those insights as well is also critical to success. To that end, that's where we come in. So Claroty xDome, formerly Medigate, we're in a bit of a branding transition, so I'll probably use them relatively interchangeably. When we jump over to our demo system, you'll see the Medigate name in use, so please understand that Medigate and xDome are the same platform. We're just going to refer to them here somewhat interchangeably, but we are the platform for the entire security journey. Jumping into it, we have a number of different solutions. We are a modularized platform, and there are some very specific things that we focus upon accordingly. So all of these are underpinned by having a comprehensive asset inventory to start. So that will be foundational, and I'll dig into that here shortly. But upon that base of having a comprehensive asset inventory, we then layer on a number of different items. Exposure management, understanding your risks and vulnerabilities, getting insights into them, being able to prioritize, really assess where you're at, prioritize the actions you should take, get guidance on how to complete those actions, and then be able to report upon the progress that you are making. Critical. Network protection, out-of-the-box grouping and segmentation, communication policies to support segmentation efforts with NAC integrations, network access control platforms, basically looking to help lock down the communications of these devices to only those things that are necessary to fulfill their functionalities, and taking anything else off the board. That is huge when it comes to preventing attackers from being able to move laterally within networks. It's one of the most effective things you can do to reduce your risk in your clinical environments. I will skip over secure access only in so much as to let you know that this is a forthcoming feature. This is one that we have a new solution that we will be bringing to healthcare, the healthcare market soon in the coming months. We're currently working with our own customers to do industry research and work with them on design partnership, but this will be a purpose-built solution for healthcare. If you're a current customer and you have any interest in working with us as a design partner on secure access, please do reach out to your current technical account manager and or customer success manager. We'll be more than happy to support getting you involved in those efforts. Otherwise, if you are a potential prospect and interested, know that this is a solution that we will soon be bringing to market. Moving on to threat detection, again, understanding your threats, understanding all the things that are happening in your network associated with your devices that will allow you to address the challenges associated with those. In many cases, it could be outdated firmware or devices with weak default passwords, things that could be leveraged to exploit your networks. We want to detect those, provide you the information on how to resolve them. Last one, operational efficiency. So with our device profiling, we can better understand and show the device utilization, provide information on their location, whether they are working as intended, and allow you to get some of those insights potentially on how to better leverage your clinical assets. So each of these things is something that we do, and many of our customers take advantage of. One, more, all of them along the way. Expanding upon this a little further, kind of circling back to the visibility and the foundation upon that, everything, as I said, requires in-depth visibility of all of the assets in the environment, all of your connected assets, I should say specifically. So our approach is leveraging a combination of methods. So we do passive collection. It is absolutely one of our foundational means of identifying devices. We do it in a proprietary fashion with our deep packet inspection. This results in no impact to the medical devices themselves. It's tailored to those constraints in healthcare environments. But secondarily, and circling back to one of the points I made very early on, a passive only collection method and passive only discovery is going to hit limitations. There are too many devices, particularly IoT and OT devices, that don't talk a ton over the wire. So getting insights on those devices can be very challenging. So we've brought other solutions in to help support that. We can do active safe queries within our system. You can leverage Claroty Edge as to do host-based discovery. These things are active methods that we can safely and effectively leverage in healthcare environments to build that solid foundation of visibility and the asset inventory details that are needed to support these other efforts and the other portions of our solution. Along with that, we also make use of a lot of external sources of information. Our relationships with medical device manufacturers, our utilization of the MDS squared and SBOM files and the various visibility and insights that gives us around devices, along with Edge and our comprehensive passive collection methods, help us get a much greater depth of detail on the clinical devices in the environment. And again, our solution, if I didn't mention it previously, was purpose-built for healthcare environments and purpose-built for medical devices. So this is what we do. It's what we do best. Moving to those other modules, solutions, talking a little more in depth about them, exposure management. Again, this is really just understanding very specifically your device's exposure. What does that device's exploitability look like? What would be the impact on your clinical workflows and patient safety if a risk were to be realized with those devices? That is a key part to managing your organization's risk. So you can see kind of the bullets that I have outlined here. I certainly won't read every single one of them in depth, but the idea is understanding your vulnerabilities, understanding your exposure, looking at what you can do with them, leveraging the intelligence that we can provide to say, understanding these risks and knowing these vulnerabilities, here's the things that you can actually do about them. So helping you to prioritize your assets based on their risk in general to your operations, and then providing the guidance necessary to help remediate those things. Ultimately, we also, of course, then include the capabilities to report upon those things. So as you move forward with your risk reduction efforts, vulnerability remediation, etc., you can track and report upon those efforts accordingly. From a network protection standpoint, our visibility into how devices are communicating across the network allows us to help craft and suggest the right policies that you should put in place to control those devices' communication. We are lucky enough to have a customer base of 280 plus healthcare delivery organizations worldwide, which gives us a huge foundation of knowledge that we can leverage to help get your segmentation efforts kickstarted, provide you baselines for what these devices should and shouldn't be able to do and talk with as part of their functionality needs, and then help integrate with your firewalls and network access control systems to lock those down and apply policies to them to vastly reduce the risk associated with those devices. So this is a very powerful feature set. Moving on, secure access. As I said, not too much to talk about as of yet, a little bit of a teaser. We are bringing a solution, a healthcare specific solution to the market soon. So if you're interested, of course, do please reach out to us. Threat detection, really this is helping give you the ability to monitor, prioritize, and respond to the various alerts throughout your enterprise. Understand the threats that are out there, looking for or leveraging signature-based detection methods, looking at the operating systems and firmware associated with the devices, monitoring their communications to see if they are, transmitting PHI or PII in an unencrypted fashion or externally. All of these things are risks that need to be addressed. So we alert upon all of those. As you'll see kind of here in the screenshot a little bit, we also map those alerts to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So for those of you that are familiar with it, it's a framework that tactics and techniques that are leveraged by attackers to exploit vulnerabilities and weaknesses in environments. So we're going to tell you of all of the alerts in your environment, here's how they map to that particular matrix, so you can prioritize your remediation efforts accordingly. We integrate with other SIMs and EDR tools also to extend the general capabilities of the systems that you already have in place and that are already in use by your operational teams. Lastly, talking a little bit about operational efficiency. So here is where we start talking how we can track and maintain device utilization and lifecycle information. So we can integrate with various CMMS and CMDB platforms, help provide a essentially dynamically updating inventory within those systems to help organizations better understand what devices are actually out there, what's actually connected to the network, and then ensure that those various databases are kept up to date with that information. We also, as I said, have an extensive customer base worldwide, so we do have industry benchmarks for not only inventory, but for utilization as well, so we can help organizations, right size their fleets, maybe load balance across sites, as well as potentially negotiate maintenance agreements, etc., because we are seeing the utilization. We've helped some organizations move on to alternative preventative maintenance cycles rather than just doing things every 6 months. Let's actually understand how often that device has been used in the past few months, and maybe there is opportunity there to save some cost accordingly, or maybe we have a lot of rented devices in our environment that aren't actually being used. Again, opportunity for cost savings. So helping organizations really unlock the insights and intelligence about their clinical devices and how they're being used, how they could be better used, how they could be better balanced across their locations. All of that is associated with the operational efficiency module. From a technical ecosystem standpoint, I mentioned integrations very briefly there, but it's important to note we integrate with a lot of the existing IT solutions that are in place in organizations. You see a few of them here, as well as 60 plus additionals that we support. These are valuable sources of information that we then integrate into the platform and just enhance everything about the information that we can provide, enhance the details that we have about devices, enhance their vulnerability information, and then in many cases pass information that we are gathering that those systems lack, and we can help enrich those systems as well too. So it's supremely beneficial on both sides, and it helps you obtain a greater level of value, not only from our platform, but also from those platforms as well. So from a general summary, ours is, as I said, a platform approach to cyber physical systems, CPS, cybersecurity, really with these primary goals in order to help address the challenges that I have covered on the previous slides. So don't want to bore you there, I want to jump into the demo. But a brief overview, of course, as well of who we are as a company today. I will broadly say, of course, that we're the best. We're very, very good at what we do. We were very good before, previously with the Medigate solution, with all of the expertise from Claroty now that we have integrated into what is now the xDome platform. There is really nothing that we can't cover when it comes to the connected devices in your healthcare environment. And I'm proud to say that we've won a number of awards associated with that. Now, to the fun stuff. Let's go look at the platform. So here we are in our demo dashboard. What you'll see here is the landing page where you have a number of useful insights presented in a widget format associated with the relevant customer environment. So this is what you would see when you log in. This particular view is fully customizable. We have a number of different widgets that you can leverage with a number of different insights to where users can customize their views, share them publicly with their teams and other users in their organization accordingly, kind of help ensure a consistent level of what everybody's looking at in general. Very, very useful, relatively intuitive as well. Across the top here in the blue section is your general navigation area, allowing you to jump to various sections of the dashboard, kind of aligning with the modules that I covered previously. So we'll talk through that momentarily. And then consistency wise, just filters up here. You'll see a lot of consistencies throughout our user interface. So very generally, if we want to see contextually only those devices on our corporate network, then we can omit our guest, watch everything refactor accordingly, and we go from there. As you'll see, from an inventory standpoint, we touch upon medical, OT, IoT, and IT assets. So you will have that foundational inventory information presented here, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into it. So if we want to go and look at the overall devices, we're going to hover over our devices section, and we're going to go look at all of our devices. In our dashboard, this is presented to you at a table level view. So you'll see a number of different attributes presented across the top of this table, each of which is sortable, searchable, filterable accordingly. There are a number of things that we are going to capture about all of these devices and present it here. If you wish to filter it down to particular groups of devices or search for particular insights associated with various devices. It's simply a question of opening up some of these filters embedded in the page, or just using the table as well too. So for instance here, I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck our IoT, IT, and OT. We'll look specifically at our medical devices. So now here I am presented with a filtered view showing all of the medical devices within my environment. Important to note, scrolls to the right, so there's a lot of useful information hidden here. Furthermore, there are also a lot of additional attributes that we often or can capture associated with the various devices in the environment, depending on a deployment, depending on your modules, etc., each of which can simply be added to a given view with just a click of a button. So for purposes of this exercise, we'll add in our serial number, maybe our SSID, we'll apply that, we'll watch our table refactor. Those new things that I added in will be highlighted here, and now there's another piece of information that's been added to the table. Very handily, this information is exportable on demand, so you can always kick it out to an Excel format, either XLS or CSV. So for those of you that prefer to export information like this, import it into other systems, etc., you can do so either this way, or we also have a public API that can be leveraged to pull that information to external systems. We have a number of folks that do so utilizing Power BI or similar. So all of these things potentially can be pulled out into your system of choice. But here it is presented at this view. Those exports that I mentioned as well can also be scheduled. So if you periodically are going to need this information on a regular basis, you can configure it to be sent to you accordingly as email attachments. You'll see here, kind of circling into the details, we're looking at all of our medical devices in aggregate, but let's dig a little deeper. We'll look at an infusion pump specifically. So again, this is part of that foundational level of visibility. We are now looking at specifically an Alaris infusion pump in this particular environment. You open up that particular single device page here. You can see a huge amount of information associated with this given device. It's IP and MAC address, but more specifically, some of the deeper level details, model, serial number, the operating system, software firmware versions, etc., how it's connected on the network, what the security posture looks like, as to whether it's has a policy being assigned to it from a relevant NAC system, location-based information. I mentioned, of course, the integrations that we provide. Many of those can provide us insight into the location of devices, particularly when it comes to those that are wirelessly connected. So we'll see here, this particular device looks like it's in building 3 on the 7th floor. If I click this little pop-up, I'm actually going to bring up a floor map that shows a little pulsing locator to show the last time this device was detected online, it was connected to the access point right here. So this is where you should go and look for it if you need to go out and physically locate the device. This is true of any of the wirelessly connected devices in an environment that we pick up through such an integration and can display in the dashboard. So it can save a lot of time for those folks who have to regularly round and collect these devices for preventative maintenance purposes or really any other reason. This is always a massive time saver that I like to show off. Accordingly, when we are integrated with CMMS and CMDB platforms, as I said, we can enrich both. In this particular case, we know that within the CMMS, here's the asset tag assigned to this device within that system, the serial number that is of record, its current state, who owns it, etc. We are able to bring those insights in, present them in the dashboard accordingly. So we are enriching the information presented here with that system. We're also most likely sending attributes to that system too. So all of these things that are not typically captured by those systems, we have the capability in many cases to send it to those systems and have it in those for reference. Understanding the risk more specifically, as I talked about at a higher level previously in the slides, here is what the risk associated with the device looks like. very broadly. We are assessing its likelihood and impact and assigning numerical values to those two primary factors in order to come up with a total risk score for a given device. There's a lot more detail to that. Those configurations can be customized for organizations. You can weigh them differently to better align them with your own risk posture as you may decide, but all of the insight is there. Because of those insights that we have on devices and that foundational level of visibility, we can also identify whether there are vulnerabilities and or alerts associated with those devices. So in a great example here, we'll see that there is a vulnerability, multiple vulnerabilities associated with this device, for which we have CVSS information, descriptions of the vulnerabilities, recommendations from the manufacturer on what to do with it. Importantly, that manufacturer information is presented here where applicable. So in this case, we can see that there are numerous actions that can potentially be taken to address the vulnerability on this device, and we'll link you right out to the manufacturer to obtain that information accordingly. Moving down a little bit, again, alerts as well, understanding if there's outdated firmware on these devices, if there have been functionality recalls, etc. This information is presented for yourselves to be able to address. Circling back to an earlier point, I said that we make use of the our relationships with the MDMs, and we utilize MDS squared files specifically as a source of information. Here's where we present those insights. We have a whole archive of all of the MDS squared files that are accessible to our customers, but for specific devices as well, you can access them right from the single device page. So if I want to obtain that information, the file links are right here. We highlight various insights around those devices as it pertains to their security capabilities. All of that information is very cleanly presented here for you to be able to reference. We also will go question by question for those MDS squared files. So if you ever want to do a comparison against them, you absolutely can. You can understand where we're getting our information for devices from, whether it's from passive collection or if we're getting details about a device through an integration. All of that is presented. The location information in a little more depth is presented in its own section. So outside of those floor maps that I showed very quickly up at the top, here's where you can get some more details around that device's location, as well as in many cases a location history for those that have a tendency to move around facilities. That information is presented here as well. From an infusion pump standpoint, those of you who are familiar with them know that they, in many cases, Alaris specifically being one of them, they have essentially the 8015, the brain, really, that pump unit, as well as the various modules that connect to that pump. We show those too. So you can see here from this map, we have this 8015 pump, as well as the modules that have been connected to that pump or are connected to that pump at any given time. Each of those has their own single device page with all of this relevant detail as well too that can be displayed. So we go a few layers deep wherever possible. Network security pieces, again, this plays into the segmentation and policy-based stuff. As far as locking down devices, communications in general, there will be information presented here wherever we have it when integrated with those systems. Here's a little better view of the communication maps that were shown in the slides earlier, so I can understand very specifically for this particular infusion pump over the past 3 months, here's how its communication has looked. Here's all of the things that it has communicated with over these particular ports and protocols where appropriate. It allows me to get a nice visualization of that data. And then for those that are interested, it can also be presented in a table format that can be exported. So there's a couple of different ways that the communication information is presented and can be leveraged. On to touching upon some of the operational efficiency pieces, the utilization side of things. This is where we help understand for this particular pump, here's what its utilization looks like. Here's its average utilization rate, the typical hours it's in use, how many hours it's in use on average in a day, and how many hours in use on average it's idle. This plays into those larger aggregate level statistics or fleet level stats around utilization that I'll be able to show you momentarily. But all of this information is presented here so you can understand how those devices are used, and in many cases when they aren't being used, so that can help plan your preventative maintenance cycles. When are the best times to take these devices out of rotation and perform whatever preventative maintenance or vulnerability remediation, etc. needs to be done with them. We give you the insights to be able to make those decisions. And then we have a running history record of the device that basically entails every change that we've ever seen to that device since we've identified it on the network. So you have a full record of that device for audit purposes or anything else that you may need such a thing for. So all of that information for all the connected devices in your environment, wherever we have it, is essentially that foundational inventory. Moving on to risk, again, understanding your exposure is key. So here is where we present really your organizational view of risk, all the devices in your environment. It will be contextualized based on the filters you apply. So for instance, if I don't really want to see include my guest in my risk overview calculations, I want to focus only on my internal network, I simply apply the relevant filters to be able to do so. As well here, let's narrow it down to just our medical devices. Let's look specifically at what my risk posture looks like for medical devices. All of these things then update accordingly. You find a number of useful statistics, help understand the various risk factors associated with those devices, help understand the compensating controls that would be most effective to be put in place for those devices to reduce their risk, and then a little more explicit recommendations on what can be done to address very specific risk factors, how many devices that would align with, how many devices would see their risk quantifiably reduced by a full risk level if that particular recommendation were to be implemented, and the corresponding percentage lowering of risk that could be realized. So all of that information is presented right here for you, and it helps with the prioritization of your risk remediation efforts and allows you to track them accordingly. Moving on from there a little bit, focusing specifically on vulnerabilities. Those are, of course, a factor associated with risk, but we do have our own unique breakouts and dashboards for vulnerabilities specifically. So this helps to understand what your posture is, understand the breakdown by category, and very key, I think, in healthcare environments, understanding of all of the vulnerabilities that may be for which you may have affected devices, how many of those are actually remediable? How many of them are there recommendations from the manufacturer on what you can do to fix that vulnerability? You'll see here, and this is absolutely very typical of healthcare environments, I'm sure you all know, not every vulnerability is for a medical device can be patched. I think we're all aware that that just isn't always a possibility for a number of different reasons, regulatory being, one of the key ones around it, but there are plenty of them that can be. So we provide you the insights to know when you can take some type of action for vulnerabilities for various device types. So all of that information is here. Again, the ability to track things over time. We're in our demo, so naturally that looks a little bit blank on our side, but would look different in your customer dashboards. Here is the information on how to prioritize. So we give a lot of your top 10s. Here's those with remediation info and what specifically we're talking about, whether it's version upgrades or patches or other mitigation actions that can be taken. All of that information would be presented in more depth as you click into each of these. And then understanding, what are my most vulnerable models, device types, manufacturers in my environment, getting you that full picture of risk overall. There's your focus. From an alerting standpoint, as we look into that threat detection side of what I talked about earlier, here's where you get your table level view of alerts in the environment, whether they are custom ones that you are able to create and tailor to your organization, or some of our out-of-the-box ones associated with updated firmware or unencrypted device communications, etc. Each of these, very similarly, is going to have details for them. So you're going to be able to click in and understand what devices are affected by those, what's the history of a given alert. Each of these is going to look a little bit different, but it's going to give you the information to understand what devices are associated with a given alert, update their status when they're fixed, export the information should you need to get it out of the platform to hand it to those folks who need to take action, etc. All of those insights are here. Here they are when mapped against that MITRE attack framework that I mentioned earlier. I can see the entire framework, or with one click of a button, I can take it down and show all of the framework as mapped only to the relevant alerts in my environment. So I can quickly kind of tune out the noise, so to speak, and focus on only those things that are relevant to myself. There's a lot more depth to go into there at any given point, but that's the idea. The network side of things, here's where we start to talk about specifically the network protection, the access controls, and putting the policies in place to help control the communications associated with, or that devices are allowed to perform in an environment. So here's your dashboard here. When you embark on your segmentation efforts and look to apply policies and access controls to devices, here's where you can track those particular efforts at a very high level, zero in accordingly based on the filters you have in place. More importantly though, and as I mentioned earlier, we give you out-of-the-box recommendations. So you're going to see for all of these various device types that we have, in many cases, a recommended out-of-the-box policy that says, at a baseline, here's what these devices should be able to communicate. The protocols they should be able to utilize, etc. Very easy to see here. If we were to dig into them, understand those types of things out of the box, and then also give you the ability to tailor them to your organizations accordingly, essentially putting them into a monitor mode where we say, here's the policy that we want to evaluate. Let's compare it against our observed traffic records that we have for these devices. Let's see how they've communicated over the past week, month, 3 months, and then see what the effect would be had we applied a policy to them. If there are places where some of that communication would have been denied, you can zero in on that very easily, investigate to see should that communication be allowed or not. If it should be, it's a couple of clicks of a button to allow it, update the policy accordingly, and then continue to embark on your monitoring efforts. You can do that perpetually for as long as you want, and until you get to a point where you are comfortable with the policy that you have as built, and then it's not going to cause impact when you actually put it into enforcement, and then you can send it over to your NAC to do those things. So we take a lot of the guesswork out of that. We give you a huge jump start, and we give you the ability to model these things and their potential effect on your network and those devices before you ever actually have to put them into enforcement. So it makes it way less scary to do. So that's a key portion of that. And we support it for a couple of different things, firewall as well, a couple of different enforcement methods, it's all there. To the operational efficiency side of things, zeroing in on some of the utilization information and location, we'll jump into the utilization piece here. Here's where we start to give you that fleet level view of your devices and how they are, one, talking on the network, and then for those where we're looking specifically at medical devices, particularly imaging devices and infusion pumps, let's get a better idea of how those things are being utilized. So at an aggregate level view, I can go and look at my C-arms, I can have insight on collectively the 9 that I have in my inventory. Here's their collective average utilization rate. Here are the individual devices themselves, and I can see their utilization rates identified here, be able to zero in on them. I can see the hours distribution of when those devices are in use or not. And then in many cases, we can get examination info into the dashboard as well. So we can understand how the examination data, total number of exams, average exams, distribution of those exams, and then details in many cases of the exams themselves. So how many images were a part of this given study, etc. All of this lets us help give you accurate info for how those devices are being utilized. I mentioned also the location data. So I showed you it on the single device page for one device. Here it is presented for all the devices in a given environment to allow you to apply very similar filters that you do throughout the dashboard to zero in on particular categories of devices should you wish, and then be able to zero in on a specific location and then understand all of the devices at that particular location connected at any given time. All of that information is here. Again, as I said, very useful for those folks that have to go out and track down these devices where that's their responsibility. Inventory benchmarks, again, we have an extensive customer base, so you have the ability to make comparisons against a few categories here. If you want to compare yourself against other acute care hospitals or base it off number of beds, the capability is there. You see your numbers, what the industry benchmark is, and it allows you to make maybe some decisions around your procurement cycles, etc. Efficiency recommendations is another key one too. I mentioned it a little earlier. Some of the insights we get just over the wire, other insights we get when integrated with a relevant CMMS platform help understand where maybe devices are underutilized or are rented and haven't been used, or those that were marked as retired in the CMMS, but we actually detect them active and in use on the network. And that could pose potentially a very high risk if it was that device was supposed to be retired and not put in circulation anymore. Those kinds of things are ones that can be identified here accordingly, and you can leverage those insights wherever you would find them useful. Then I guess lastly, touching upon maybe that technical ecosystem that I was talking about, looking at all of our supported integrations, here they are as of today, 80 plus integrations that are on offer across a number of different categories. So we can absolutely leverage many of the systems that are already in place today to either enhance the data that we're able to present within the dashboard and or enhance the utility and value you get from those external systems as well. So I think that covers everything very broadly. I will now kind of click back over, jump to this slide, and then I think we can maybe turn it over for questions where appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. We've got a few come in. I'm going to start with, I've seen many platforms, so what makes your platform so special?
Great question. It was designed specifically for healthcare from the start. So for those of you that may be familiar with the story with Medigate in general, Medigate was formulated kind of based off WannaCry, which was a huge wake up for the healthcare industry. So our solution was initially designed specifically for healthcare, hence why it was designed as a passive collection solution. We have the largest number of protocols that we can identify in a healthcare environment. So of all the products that are out there, we frankly think we do it the best. And we were built for that purpose. When the Claroty acquisition took place a couple of years ago, that allowed us to then not only further enhance the healthcare platform itself and enhance what we were already doing, but it allowed us to bring those additional capabilities in for the OT information and IoT information, all of those other devices where that was the Claroty specialty, as well as introduce those active collection methods. So Claroty Edge and active queries, each of those things was helped informed from our industrial vertical. So we are bringing those things into the healthcare environment as well. So comprehensively, we have the greatest level of expertise across a healthcare environment and across all of those device types that you find in a healthcare environment.
Okay, perfect. So leading on from that, why do you have so many modules and solutions?
Flexibility. So as you saw, there's a lot of capabilities there. Not every healthcare organization is at the same level of cybersecurity maturity to be able to take advantage of all of those capabilities. Some of them may be very early on in their journey and may find that the visibility and the accurate asset inventory that is foundational is good enough for now, and then they need to put some other processes in place and maybe additional budget or organizational staffing, et cetera, to then grow into using and being able to effectively leverage the other solutions as part of our platform. So it's modularized to provide that level of flexibility so we can meet the organizations where they are at today in their maturity level and then grow with them in the future as their maturity evolves and grows.
Perfect. We've got time for one more question. I have got other questions, Justin, but I will email them to you afterwards so you can answer them offline.
Certainly.
Okay, right. This question is, now, given all the capabilities of the platform, how do I get the most out of such an investment?
Perfect. You leverage the expertise that comes with the technology. So you see my title, Director of Customer Success. So I am actually on the post-sales side of our business. Every customer of ours, when they purchase the platform, as part of it, they are assigned a dedicated customer success manager, CSM, and a dedicated technical account manager, a TAM. The TAM is going to be the one that helps to guide the deployment of the solution and ensure that it is deployed appropriately and properly and integrated with all the possible systems in an environment that it can be. So you get the optimal deployment and it's guided by us. And the customer success manager then that is also assigned to you is responsible for guiding your ongoing adoption and operationalization of the platform and also provide ongoing enablement to ensure consistent and maximum value realization. So you don't just get the platform and the technology itself, you get a group of people who act as your SMEs and your guides for as long as you are a customer. We will be there to help push you forward, provide the advisorship and the guidance that is needed to really fully leverage the platform. So that's our job, is to help you do that.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time and for a really informative demo. Thank you. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor's website, claroty.com, to find out more about the product. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is brown. So congratulations to our winner of the $100 Amazon gift card, Jody Butler of Memorial Hospital of Sweetwater County in Wyoming. So congrats, Jody. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once you've submitted the survey. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Now, if you've missed any of our past Tools of a Trade demos, please visit webinarwednesday.live to view our whole archive. We'll be back next month with another Tools of the Trade live demo and, of course, another 10th anniversary prize. So please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you all once again for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.